I'm 2 months past my haircut due date, so I'm kind of a mess here.
No, it's just a little surreal in Sacramento because they just stopped the lockdown and started the curfews. So it's just a strange world.
Well, I have high hopes for it calming down, turning into something useful. You know what I mean? I see a lot of opportunity here if we could just have some conversations, but that seems harder than what I would think it would be. But that's me.
Yeah. Well, tell me a little bit about you, John.
Oh boy. It's kind of weird. And first of all, I want to tell you that you're one of the people that on a daily basis really moves me along, and that's a good thing. I really appreciate that. I really appreciate your position in where the rubber hits the road pastoral situation, you know, and that's what I think so many people are missing when they look out into the world and they think they know what other people's worlds are about. And I'm like, I don't know what that is, you know? So conversation is the way it works. That's how you learn everything. Me, well, I was a musician for a long time, professional musician. Stopped doing that, became a production person. That's why I'm down with the COVID. I do live concerts and shows and things, and I'm basically sitting at home not knowing what day it is at this point. Starting to do a lot of live streaming things with bands and, you know, portable setups for internet streaming, and a couple drive-in types of shows that are starting up and stuff, because we're in phase 4 with that, and it might be, I mean, Live Nation and big things are saying they're not going to book anything until 2021 because you can't schedule any kind of a tour. You know, it's not like you snap your fingers and open your door and put your open sign on. You know, it's right. So I'm down for that. My thing is that I was raised Catholic. I went to church until I was about 17 or 18, and then I got in a band. Not that I'm saying that's a cause and effect situation, but I had a lot of questions with the Catholic Church. We had an old school Polish priest. The Mass was in Latin way longer than it should have been, you know, and I was responsible for bringing my little brother to church, who was 11 years younger than me. So I had this whole, I didn't know what the situation was. It wasn't feeling productive to my life. But anyway, did the music thing, came back out, did a bunch of other stuff. I have a recording studio that I run. About 22 years ago, I started getting involved in self-awareness training stuff, Tony Robbins, landmark education, that kind of stuff, you know. So I lingered along in that for a long time. I wasn't political. I didn't vote for 12 years. The whole 2016 election, I found myself in a position of defending myself for not knowing what was going or where I stood. You know, I didn't have an opinion about what should be happening, so therefore I was instantly an outcast from all sides. So I basically felt that I was insulted into voting. So I voted. I didn't watch any primaries or any of the stuff on TV about I don't even have Fox News or CNN or MSNBC. I've never seen those on my own TV ever. I don't have them, which now I'm missing them because I'm trying to find live coverage and I can't find anything. But so I remember I watched the election returns and I just sat there and I said, I don't know what's going on. You know, I literally don't have any kind of data about how this situation happened where all my friends are telling me that this is impossible, it's never going to happen. So, and it didn't even make me interested politically, but it made me interested cognitively. Like, what am I missing here that's not going on? Because everybody's saying, I feel this, and I'm just like, I don't know. So, just before that point, I had started getting into basically YouTube videos of people that I was looking for that were talking about things that I found interesting and useful. I started this whole thing out as trying to find useful ways to go out into the world, personally, myself to one other person. Again, back to the pastoral thing. People that I know, I want to be able to relate to and try to get some ideas going that make things work. It started out for musicians because I have so many musician friends that are in dysfunctional families, which is what most bands are, you know. trying to get them to put together recording projects, trying to get them to look at the music world from a 2020 perspective of, hey, let's do some videos and put them on YouTube because 1 million people could see it by tomorrow. You never know, you know, all about providing to put the content out there. So anyway, I opened my studio and I had a Sam's Club membership for supplies and things like that. So at that time, their book section had all kinds of crazy compilation things. And I started reading C.S. Lewis compilation. I got some books right here where there's like 4 books in one book. So I really got into his whole intellectual approach towards religion and towards life, and reading all his letters back and forth in the newspapers like they used to do back in the 40s where people would argue back and forth. It was amazing, right? It was a real conversation at that point as opposed to sound bites, which is all I ever see on the news. So I got into that. And then after the election, just before the election, I found Jordan Peterson. And I'm like, this guy's a 21st century C.S. Lewis in our face. And I watched all of his videos at least once, hundreds and hundreds. I spent over a year watching Jordan Peterson videos and just finding that every time he told a story that I might have thought wasn't important in my life, all the similarities would come flooding in. This is part of my whole zeitgeist theory that I'll lay on you in a bit here, but it's becoming so obvious that all this wisdom that's out there is in a story, and that's how we relate to them as human beings that I find. So again, that enthralled me. So I watched all his videos, and I watched a lot of other videos, a lot of international dark web stuff. You know, I mean, I love it when you talk about Eric and Brett because, man, I love them to death, but sometimes I just want to go, come on here. The same with Sam Harris. I mean, I was totally, the last meeting he had with Jordan Peterson, where Brett was he was the moderator. I listened to that on the way to the New York State Sales Fair, and I listened to it again on the way back because I was doing a show at the New York State Sales Fair in Syracuse, and I live in Albany, New York, almost upstate New York. So I kept getting to the point with Harris in that video, like he's trying to take this someplace, but he doesn't have any way to move it past where he is. And Peterson was just saying, if you just go back and look at this, the structure is already intact here. We just have to figure out how to use it in an up-to-date way. And this is the thing with Brett, too. I've been watching his new podcast with his wife, and that's cool. You know, I don't really know her I know of her, but I don't know her that well. But they're an interesting couple, and they're really smart, and I love the biological insight that I can get from that. You know, it seems really, he's not fooling around. He's not making stuff up to make stuff up. He's not, you know, he's not on a university someplace where he's worried about his grant money or something. So I take it a little more seriously. The credibility goes up in those situations. But even them, I mean, well, I cut short my history here. So anyway, I'll get back to Brett and Eric. I wanted to put together some kind of a helpful system, easy steps for musicians to follow to try to have better relationships inside of their bands and make their bands more successful. Because I was inside a band for years, and now I'm on the production end, so I have a vested interest. If I can help you, we can all make money. This is how it's supposed to work. We help each other. We pool our talents. You know, normal stuff, right? So as it turned out, after I found Scott Adams, it was like somebody had peeled the last layer of the onion off, and I'm like, I'm naked in the desert here. What am I going to do? I really didn't. So I just started finding, as I said, that his way of viewing things and all the things that Jordan Peterson talked about, and on top of that, your clarification in a lot of ways of what Peterson was talking about from a foot soldier's perspective, rubber meets the road, face to face kind of thing, where I was finding all these things were going in the same direction, it felt like. It's just everybody is coming to the same conclusion that the conversation and the story is what has to happen. And I don't know how into Adams you are, but I just watched him a few minutes ago. You know, he's all about the possibilities of imagining a good ending and then working your life towards that, kind of like the whole salvation aspect of things, you know. And part of that is what I almost had a spiritual moment last week when I was listening to you on the way to a cookout at my friend's house. I was thinking of C.S. Lewis riding the motorcycle with his brother, and he goes in a non-believer and comes out a believer, and I'm like, how did that ever happen, right? Not that it happened, but I'm saying is that I was thinking about that, and I was listening to you, and you were talking about the trough. And I always talk to people about, you got to create a space for the possibilities to happen here, because if you don't, it's not there, you know? Yeah. It's kind of like I use that same kind of talk when I'm trying to illuminate, you know, a lot of ways how our brains work, I think, is that if you take something out, then you make space for other stuff to come in. And this is where I go with all my friends that are TDS syndrome people, you know, and the last few days I got 2 private messages today from people apologizing to me for the way they talk to me on Facebook. And I'm like, I'm completely consistent. I never insult people. I'm always talking about the ideas. Let's have a conversation. And then, you know, it stops for a number of reasons. But people that make it, but it's, I'm at a point where I have all these ideas about how personally we can change our approach at that first level of working towards the outside world. Basically the filters. I've defined the filters down to 2 final things that if you can just go in there, recognize what it is, and say, hey, let's try this path this time instead of that path. And again, that the religious experience I was having when you said about the trough, is I just got this overwhelming feeling of creating that possibility for people and or finding a way to help them create the possibility. Because that's what I don't know. I don't have a curriculum. I don't have a presentation in place yet, because every day it seems like there's all this input coming in and I'm being flooded with all these ideas that all make sense, but I don't have like a desk to put the things in the drawers, you know? So that's where I'm at right now.
I know exactly what you mean. And it takes time, and after a while, a few things start to bubble up and say, okay, that I know, and that I know, and that I know, and you know, but it's constant integration of new data and new input and new perspectives, and yeah. So, but you were going someplace, and you got back to the story, and you're going to go back to the other place, and that was interesting.
Talking about Eric and Brett.
Eric and Brett.
Well, basically, I guess we're calling it Jesus smuggling, right, or something. Whenever people try to take the structure of religion and use it to put together their new thing, without realizing that the structure of religion is like the whole big part of it that has to be there. Otherwise, it don't work. You can't just transplant it. You have to have the wisdom and stuff has to be there. So, what do you think about that? I have a lot of atheist friends right now. You know, some flat earthers, and I don't really know how to talk to them about that. What would be your advice on that?
Well, I find with people, this is what you learn as a pastor, that you don't really talk people into things. They talk themselves into things. And so your majority change tool with people is listening. And it sounds counterproductive, but generally speaking, you get your chance to talk to people. At least I do as a pastor, and now on YouTube. But people only appropriate what they're able to, and that talking is the way of appropriating it and integrating it and fitting it in, because unless they're able to sort of receive and bring it in, you know, it's just water running over a rock, and it doesn't do anything. And so that's the way people are.
Right. So they have to be willing to reframe what they're looking at. They have to be and this is the thing. If I can that was the big thing for me, is I just became willing. I did it this morning because I checked myself when I was watching some news show last night that comes on at 1 o'clock in the morning. And it's like a TMZ type show, but it's not TMZ. As I've learned, TMZ is pretty damn accurate, relatively speaking, compared to most things. And I don't even have it on my TV, but I hear stories. But this other show, and they were talking about some marriages and divorces, and then they got into stuff where the headline that came out of the announcer's mouth was basically a narrative. So I had to stop myself and say,
oh, just lost the picture. There we go.
Hang on. Somebody called.
Oh.
My computer guy who never calls. Now he's calling. Where was I? I'm sorry.
No, TMZ.
Right.
That they were talking a narrative.
And this is what I try to ask my friends, if, respectfully, like, this is what I do. When I hear something and a flag goes up and I feel myself reacting to it, I take a step back and say, what am I doing here? How am I choosing a way to look at this, or am I just taking in the information, which I think is the hardest thing to do, right? Taking in information out of curiosity, it's nowhere near as satisfying as taking it in from confirmation, because I don't even know what it is, It doesn't feel like I've done something and I've accomplished something. I mean, it does eventually, but it's not, I think humans like that, I'm right every step of the way, So it's hard to get past that. But so much stuff I see on TV is just, I mean, it's just fake. It's not even, you can never verify what people say, and it goes by. So I found myself not watching I can't even watch local news sometimes.
Yeah.
So
no, it's television news is just about unwatchable. It really is. At just about any level. Well, I'm really curious about your TMZ observation, because what strikes me, TMZ, People Magazine, celebrity gossip, that's kind of a supermarket tabloid level of journalism. But
right.
When you said that, I thought, but in an age when most of what is being displayed as news on television just feels simply like propaganda, overly dominated by a narrative.
Right.
Gossip news has a feeling of reality, because at least
the stories are already interesting.
Yeah, they're already interesting.
You don't have to make up stuff to make something that happened interesting. Like if they see Trump doing something, or they see somebody else doing something, the news makes up this whole story about what they think was going on here inside somebody's head. And I'm like, I'd rather see what somebody's doing. That's news. Show me the event. Don't tell me what I should think about the event. Right, it's propaganda-ish.
Yeah.
But that's the media's business model, as far as I can see. So I'm not surprised when that happens. I'm just surprised how many people don't see it as a business model and take it as something else. I don't know. Almost religious sometimes, in fact. That's what bothers me, I think.
Well, and, I kind of, you really have me thinking about the history of news. And, I started making videos because, well, I was playing around with YouTube for other reasons, but, I was rereading Neil Postman's Amusing Ourselves to Death. And he was talking about, he wrote this book in the 80s, back when cable was sort of coming on, and you had the proliferation of cable news. And of course, that has just been dwarfed by YouTube and the internet now. But, he noted, and it's right, how television, in order to cultivate and form an audience, has basically devolved into narratives. And so sports is always a narrative. I mean, at the beginning of any sports presentation, you basically have the narrative buildup to contextualize the game. Right. And, Michael Jordan, The Last Dance, you can't have basketball on right now because of COVID. So then here we're going to have the story of Michael Jordan. And I was reading some of the response pieces on websites about that. And, and it's been in the transition from COVID obsession to riot obsession, that thing just sort of happened in a New York minute. It's kind of like World War II, destroying the Depression. It's just a bigger thing. Go ahead.
In one week, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And the irony of the narrative, which was stay at home, stay at home, stay at home, be safe, be safe, be safe. And then all these stupid people out there who aren't being safe. Well, now we have a whole other group of people out there who aren't being safe. And it's like, well, look over here. And it's like, okay, what is your job anyway, Mr. News Person?
Well, this goes back to what you said the other day, and I've been saying this for years to people. And I said, you want to know about human nature? Look at Adam and Eve. She screws up, then he screws up. God comes in. What happened? Blame her, blame the snake. It's the most basic survival instinct there is, right? One me, their fault.
That's right. Look over there.
Understanding that to me was a big breakthrough, because I'm like, that's what I do all the time. I go, and if I can, again, that's the kind of thing with the system I'm putting together. There's little switches in those. It's like blocking the receptors on the cells, for the COVID virus, for the infection to get in. If you can just resist that urge to jump, and I said, maybe you might have said that a couple weeks ago. Somebody else said that, and it's like, if you can just that, it's like not putting the cigarette in your mouth. You know what I mean? If you want to quit smoking, if you don't put the cigarette in your mouth, it'll work every single time. But obviously, it's not easy. It's like, and because a lot of people always give me the whole, well, knowledge is power. I said, well, a lot of overweight people know how to lose weight, but they're not losing weight. You have to be able to react consistently with that knowledge and turn it into action so that you can move forward. And something you can measure. This is all the stuff that Adams just lays out every day. And I'm just like, it just makes so much sense. It's like, I want to be able to look at things. Well, I often make the analogy that politics is like sports, except that you don't know the outcome ever, usually, and you can't bet on it. So what's the point? It's a stupid hobby. I'd rather know somebody who's got fantasy football coming out there, all over their house and crazy stuff going on. That makes more sense. At least you might make some money on it, and it doesn't hurt anybody. And they're fake people, really. It's just weird.
I'm really curious about your observation that most bands are dysfunctional families, but then also musicians, because musicians are like poets in that, and I'm not just talking regular people who know how to play instruments and things. I'm talking about musicians, because the true artist, the real musician is someone who is, they're not like the rest of us. And then of course a band, you put them together, and so I'd like to hear more about that. So what have you learned about that?
Well, basically, it's the reason that real bands have managers. Because if we go back to that simple filter system I'm talking about, every musician has a picture in their head. This is how a band should be. See, I learned this from my mother. My mother was the absolute worst in some kinds of recognition. Her world ran like this. A man should be this. A husband should be this. A son should be this. And if they're not, I'm in your face. She would work for other families and come home and say, gee, that family, it runs so good and this and that. And I'm like, I'm the kid. You're the parent. What are you telling me here? But it gave me a real, face-to-face view of that kind of stuff, where her picture was not moving. Her picture was set in stone. So a lot of musicians, what happened is they have a really low resolution picture of what they think their musical career should be. And first of all, like a lot of things, it doesn't function well because it doesn't operate on a timeline. They take snapshots of it and they judge, like the world. That's the world. People put pictures up. I'm like, picture's live. What's a picture? There's no context. You don't know when, what, where, who, how, anything about that. So musicians do that. They have elephant-like memories if they feel that they've been wronged by somebody. Like if I joined this band and I think he was ripping me off or he was disrespecting me, if you mention that person, the musician's first thing is, yeah, he did this to me. In a reframing way that doesn't move anything forward, just keeps bringing it back to the worst possible lowest common denominator. also, I mean, they're ego-driven, but like children. They're not ego-driven like corporate executives where they're using their ego to get ahead. As Adam says, they're not using their ego as a tool. They're a pawn to their ego. So if they get any kind of poke at their ego, again, they take it personally, and that becomes part of all the baggage they're dragging around. I know so many musicians right now that are in their 40s and 50s that when I see them, they remind me of Santa Claus dragging a bag of toys behind them. They got all this crap in the bag that does no good, but as we said way earlier, takes up that space. It's in the trough. Throw it out. Get rid of it. It's not serving it. It's like a flat tire on your car, just get rid of it. But it's funny to talk about it, but when you see this for 20, 30 years and you see how talented people are. I got one friend of mine right now who's an instrumentalist, and he's super talented, but gets so many things going on in his mind that he makes matter. He gives value to these things, which I think is a lot of my thing here too, is that you choose what you give value to. If you value that other person being a bad person, then you got that in your world. Why would you want that? I don't want that. How about let's get together with this person over here and make something and write a song. Do it this time, especially this time with the COVID is a really good example of the musicians that are in the weeds on this stuff. There's a lot of bands that if they were looking forward in time with an ending to the story that was good, they would say, hey, we're not working. Let's write music and make videos and put it on YouTube so that when everybody pays attention again, or not even that, the good thing is you don't even have to wait because it's on YouTube. You just need to get your friends to look at it on YouTube. It's way easier than getting people to come out to a show, let me tell you what. But this is the kind of thing where so many musicians are caught up in, whoa, let's do this live streaming thing and this and that. I go, that's great if you're already an established musician. But the people that play at the pub on Friday night for $100 to 20 people putting up videos, nobody comes to see you when you're playing live. Why do I want to watch you in your living room with bad audio, bad video, out-of-tune guitars, dogs barking in the background? It's not a show. I like shows. I'm a show guy. But watching that over the years, it's like I wish I could help people. And I found a lot of this because a lot of my friends think that I'm a political person, and I'm not at all. I'm all about this cognitive stuff of let's find a way to look at the world that lets us go places and do things and presents the most possibilities. Let's make a bigger and bigger trough out there for all these great things that might happen. But I think that it seems to me that most people just don't register that. They are not wired that way. So you had somebody on, were you talking the other day on a video about a person who decided that he no longer believes in God? What was the story with that? And how did you react to that? I didn't get to listen to the whole thing.
Well, I don't know that I reacted to it, but I understand.
Well, what would you do? What would you do?
What would I do as a pastor is I go back to plan A, which is you sit down and you start asking them questions and you get them talking.
Okay. Is this questions about basic things?
Well, you always start with personal things because that's what if you ask them about philosophy or religion or something,
right,
they just got this grab bag of things they picked up along the way that actually got stuck to the rocks in the river. But if you begin asking them personal things, you'll find that, so we have these categories of people, and the categories are meaningful. They really are. But they only go so deep with most people. And so there's a huge amount of commonality from culture, from, all sorts, from patterns. And you were talking about musicians and you're talking about trying to help them. And I'm thinking, this is Pastoral Work 101, because you see so many stuck people. And boy, you said it so well. They take snapshots of it and they judge. Yeah, that's exactly. Here's one little thing that happened in their life. They took a picture of it and they put it on the wall and they revisit it every day and they fixate on it. And that's exactly where they live, fixated on it. It's like, you should really take that off the wall and throw that away, because that isn't helping you. But they don't. And so then as you see it. I mean, there's this YouTube with this woman with a nail in the head, and the boyfriend's trying to say, honey, it's about the nail. Don't talk about the nail. And it's like, I've been in so many conversations like that. So then you realize, okay, the nail's off limits. And as a pastor, or as a person, okay, the photograph, that's their God. That's what they've chosen to center their life around. Okay, so if you can try calling it out once, and if it doesn't work, you learn from that. You don't make that moment your picture, and then you move on and you begin asking about other things. And again, you just sort of, some people say, well, Paul, that sounds like therapy. Yeah, it sounds like therapy. Pastors have been doing it for a long time. People have been doing it for a long time. You have to talk your way out of things often. And so as you get better and more experienced at this, you learn little tricks with people, and you kind of get a sense of where to go and what to get them talking about. And in many cases, a lot of it is just friendship. But the difficulty is, if you're a pastor, or, if let's say you're a manager, well, there's only so much time I have to give you to help you with your picture that you put up on the wall. And so I'm going to have to trust, I'm going to have to pray and trust that, that God out there has your, you're a good future for you, because I know I can't engineer it for you. So, I love the way you put that. They have an elephant like memory when it comes to how they've been wronged. A reframing way that brings them back to the worst common denominator, ego driven like children. They're a pawn to their ego. I mean, all that stuff is so common and so true of us. And so, I find, again, friendship, patience, listening well. And then when you begin to see, it's sort of like the 1 minute manager with people. You see them for a moment doing things right. Take a picture of that and bring that up again. Remember when you did this? And then you kind of strengthen that. And,
Well, Adams talks about that as the hypnotism. When you see a certain look in somebody's eye, you know that they're there where you need them to be. And okay, now we can go to the next step.
Yep.
One thing I want to praise for, because this is what I crave in my life. Because right now in my world, I'm alone. I have nobody I'm all by myself. I have no family close by. I have some friends that I visit, but my whole life was going out and doing events. So that was my whole social life, and it's been gone for almost 3 months now.
Wow.
And it's starting to wear on. I'm getting a lot of work done, but it's starting to wear on me. But my point is that you're able to stay in the context of a conversation where you can keep churning the ideas. Everybody that I know, they drop out into the weeds where all the content is and the people are. And and right back to Adam and Eve, as long as they got somebody to blame, most people are satisfied. Hey, I took a stand. Here I am, but it doesn't further anything. So this is my specific situation. I have a musician I work with who was like one of the greatest people in the world, right? Loved to death. Talked to him yesterday, just made my day, right? Just super nice guy. And his wife loves me. She doesn't know me very well, just from what she's learned from him and a little bit of interaction we've had. But she gets involved sometimes in posting on social media. Like the other day, she posted a picture. Well, all right, she posted the picture of Trump with the Bible, right? So that was already a whole can of worms before anybody said anything. But again, I'm always looking at the situation saying, what don't we know here? And let's not talk about what we don't know. Let's try to make some points about things that, again, understanding that when people at that level go on TV and do something, they're not spitballing it. You know what I mean? He's planned it. He knows what he's doing, and he's trying to make it look like something good for someone. And by default, it's going to look bad for somebody else. Now, I can stand over here and look at that and say, okay, I get it. But if you're inside one of those bubbles, you're done, right? You're just pounding on the wall, screaming and yelling, oh my God, it's terrible. So I had a thread on Facebook and I took it down because I started conversing with her, trying to converse with her about it, and it was not going that well. So I just deleted the whole thing. But that's a situation I have now. I want to be able to talk to her, and I think if I was in person, I could do it fine. It's just that I think a lot of these things that we're talking about are harder to convey, even though it works really well with me. I seem to be very empathetic to video, you know what I mean? Because I'm an audio video guy, and like you looking at you there is like having you here in the room, you know? But with some people, they can't read the written word and translate that into a personal interaction. So that's the hard part. So you're the pastor. But this person, this is what I want to do. I want to have a conversation with her and have it be productive and not in any way, shape, or form damage whatever is going on, because I value that way too much. So I'm kind of in a pickle here.
Well, one of the things, so I'm old enough to remember the time, as you are, I think, the time before email and internet and all of those things. And when email came about, so, you know, email used to be kind of the main thing we used the internet for. You know, websites were starting, but, you know, email was mostly it. And you very quickly learned as a pastor that if you had, because the type of thing that you're talking about happens a lot in churches, because churches are these communities that are fairly durable and they stick around. And so you build all of these relationships of varying intensities with a broad number of people. And it's also sort of like a big dysfunctional family. It's like a dysfunctional extended family, because everybody has reputations and they're known and so forth, and things get remembered. I remember when this person did this, and I'll never forgive them for that in church. You know, they stood up and they said something, or they did something, or they, you know, the biggest church the biggest fight this church ever had happened before I got here, but I heard about it for years, was when they were remodeling the sanctuary. Were they going to put burgundy carpet down or like dark blue? And the church lined up to have a fight over those colors. And that's why I'm very slow to change anything here, because it's like, you're just asking for trouble. So anyway, email comes along and pastors are like, oh, great, I can talk to lots of people this way. Well, very quickly, pastors found out that once a conversation gets to a certain place, drop the email, maybe pick up the phone, but better yet, get in the car, go sit with that person and talk to them face to face. Now, then social media comes along, and, you know, I mean, you made the observation about TMZ, the genius of Trump, and I know a certain percentage of the people, just if I say anything positive about Trump, they lose their mind. Okay.
Just about technique, though, right? Not even
right, exactly. And that's one thing. So I first got interested in Scott Adams. I don't watch him that much, but I was curious about him when Trump won, and I caught a little bit of his story, and then I actually read his How to Succeed book, which I also found fascinating.
Yep.
And there was a lot of wisdom in that book, actually. I learned a number of things from that book. But you know, here's the thing about Trump. He is a savant or a genius at a level of interacting with people at the TMZ level, because in many ways that was the wavelength that he was at in this country. You know, I grew up in the New York metropolitan area, so Donald Trump was not an unknown quantity. Neither was Howard Stern. I mean, and it's all just sort of at the TMZ level. And that's a wavelength that, you know, human beings, I mean, we operate on all these different wavelengths, but some of us prefer different ones. That's a powerful and important wavelength that has a lot to do with some very basic things, the stuff we're talking about. I mean, very much the level of, why do we love watching celebrity meltdowns? Well, because celebrities are the stars by which we try to navigate and guide our lives. And if they have a meltdown, then I don't feel too badly about my life, because I have meltdowns too.
Yep.
Simple.
And so it sounds like you're putting together a business model for Trump media after he's out of office.
Hey, he's far beyond me in terms of gathering a crowd and getting attention and
But
whispering
back to Adams again.
elephants.
You should check out Scott the last few days. He's got some really interesting perspectives, down to earth, rubber hits the road, offering to help. You know, that's the thing. People actually offering to help. Like, tell me what I can do. Let me help.
Yeah.
Trying to get that narrative across is, I mean, I have so many friends, again, that I'm just like, look, I've been your friend for 30 years. I see you doing this. Maybe you're drinking too much. Maybe you're going out too much. Maybe you're doing whatever, you know, let me help. I don't want to be a bystander and watch things happen to you that are unnecessary. So,
but the coin of the realm is always trust. Right. And people will only be open to your offer to help if they trust you. And for the most part, that trust has everything to do with the little snapshots of their lives that they took.
Right.
And if you're in a snapshot where they were in a pickle and you help them out, one of the things you also learn as a pastor is, I've said it on my channel before, people have a hard time understanding it, is that funerals are so much more powerful than weddings.
Absolutely.
Because funerals, people don't play anywhere near, they still play games at funerals, some of them, but most people, death has a sobering effect on most people. And so they're ready to look at some things, okay? And
because that process at the funeral takes every person in their head to the end of the story. Right. I'm coming back with hindsight now, and it's like, wait a minute, let's look around. As the wedding is happy and everybody's drunk, and, you know, I mean, that's a celebration, which is beautiful. But I think the story aspect of the funeral is much stronger because you know what's going to happen.
That's right. Because all weddings end in the funeral or divorce court. Those are two options. And especially now, you go to a wedding and it's like, which is it going to be?
I work a lot of weddings. I don't know. Yeah, sometimes it's
so
interesting stuff.
So people, and you know, I really love how you laid this out because it's so true. And I see this now, you know, that snapshot you took was real, and someone might have wronged you and hurt you or disappointed you or something like that. But if you make that your life, you know, that's on you.
That's what I keep saying. It's on, you know. But, well, I mean, a lot of that is back to the perspective of that you're creating your own reality. Yeah. You know, I mean, as far as what you see the world as is your choice. It's not somebody else's choice. Whether it is what it is or not actually doesn't even matter to me because I'm only functioning in my world. Yeah. So if I can find useful tools to make things, I mean, my life has changed like the past year. It's just, I mean, I'm different with clients now. Clients I would have turned down a year ago, I'm now good friends with because I just keep talking myself back through, make the best of it. Let's help them make their vision a reality, you know, and you get used to doing that. And I'd have to fight it because I have some people that are testing that, you know what I mean? But as long as I keep focused, we get accomplished what we want to accomplish and everybody's happy. And I think that simple kind of equation way of looking at the world and throwing all the other stuff out in a lot of situations can be helpful, especially in relationships, especially among people. And like my relationship with my brother has changed drastically in the last year. You know, our mother died 5-6 years ago and she was a mess and he's just like her. And I felt really bad, but I'm relating to him much better. And I find myself, because of my ability to step back and say, I don't need to be right about this, that's it. I don't need to have an opinion on this. I can look at this information and I'm fine. Because my having an opinion on it, what does that do? Starts a fight with somebody with a different opinion. It doesn't accomplish anything unless I'm starting a company. A good friend of mine, she said her daughter might want to change her major now because of the riots and stuff and like become a social worker. And I'm like, okay, I guess, but if she's en route to some high-end profession where she might be somebody that people will listen to or trust or have enough money to make a difference. Isn't that, it's more of a delayed gratification looking at things, which I think happens to a lot of people, is I want to feel good now, so I do this. But if 5 years out, you can make a big difference in something, that's a noble cause, right? To me,
Sure.
that's the good fight. That's the kind of thing where we should be, aspiring to be. And I'm not being very religious today here. I'm sorry about that.
That's okay. You don't have
I'm
to be.
finding that it's all layered and nested in the same kind of things, And I think for a lot of people, I'm feeling badly about a lot of people right now, is because it seems to me that if I visualize them, I see that they have this hatred in them for whatever reason. And that's probably the God-shaped void that might be revealed if the hatred went away. A lot of people could have great stuff coming into that space if they just could stop with that, throwing that filter up right off the bat. It's so tiring because, and guys are probably worse than women. Back when I was going out to bars and stuff, you had people yelling across the bar about political stuff. All I can think of is being a little kid on the bus, like in kindergarten, and you got half the kids yelling Kennedy, the other half are yelling Nixon, Kennedy, Nixon, Kennedy. And I'm like, that's what we're doing. Like, what are we doing? We're on the short bus. It doesn't make any sense. Oh God.
Oh.
I feel sad though. I felt sad the last few days, and that bothers me because I haven't felt that way in a long time.
Well,
I was always looking towards the COVID thing was one thing. At least you got people talking about, dates and times and situations, even though it's a mess. I just finally certified for my pandemic unemployment here in New York yesterday from March 14th, the last day that I worked. It's like I had money set aside to have dental work done. Thank God. Otherwise, I'd be, down at the homeless shelter, basically, living in my van down by the river. Oh. So you're in what city exactly again?
Sacramento, California.
How's the weather there?
We got a little heat wave right now, so it'll be over 100 yesterday, today, and tomorrow, and then it'll cool down again. So that's.
Were there demonstrations or worse where you were?
Yeah, there's been demonstrations. So we're the state capitol, and so there's been demonstrations at the Capitol building. And
yeah,
downtown.
we're in the Capitol too here. We're in the Capitol, so we had them. I didn't go see any of them.
No.
In fact, somebody called me yesterday and said, we're going to the studio. Is it okay to go to Albany? Because we don't know what's going on. I said, I don't know, I guess, and I'm in the warehouse district anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But I don't think there was any real damage, too much damage done, thank God.
Yeah, that's
the part that bothers me.
Yeah, there was looting in some areas, and what was interesting was that there's kind of the city center, and the city's been really pushing hard to develop their downtown, and they put an arena down there, and they're trying to make it a showcase. And I just wonder if this is just gonna. For the last 20, 30 years, this is big gravity towards city centers again, and now between COVID and the riots, it could all go the other way, and California could just start, going back to the suburban model again. So I found my father, I grew up in Patterson, and of course race relations was a very big deal in our church and in our life. And in the 60s and 70s, it basically, the way, for a lot of Christians, the way you address racism is to build personal relationships across racial lines and live as families or church families across these lines, and so that we have face-to-face personal relationships. And that isn't in any way to discount the painful history or the realities of racism or anything like that. But the way you address it is by addressing it in yourself. And you do that through actual relationships. And that's been my whole life. And I watched this tearing apart, and the whole purpose of that integrated approach to racism was, in a sense, to de-racialize the conversation and humanize the conversation. And I've just seen over the last decade or more the racialization of so many things. And I'm thinking, this is going to make people see things that may or may not be there. And that's going to put that snapshot up on the wall for so many people. And you're just reinforcing that snapshot. And you say, yeah, that's right. But if you live in that snapshot, you're going to miss living. So please don't do this, and let's not do this as a cultural level. And I find so much of how I see ministers and politicians talking, I just hear them and think, you're making it worse. You're making it worse. Can we learn what we learned in the 60s and 70s and not unlearn it and have to go back through all of that pain again? So I find it.
So universally, like, all pastors are following the same path as far as what they're telling their people in churches. I don't know.
What happens is that the memification of language. And so, pastors that aren't bigots stand up and say certain things. And so pastors all over the place, because they don't want to get shot at, they say certain things. And so these certain things become the ritual and the magic words that somehow sit. And I watch this and I just think, this is a disaster, because we're just reinforcing these memes, and instead of actually upping the resolution on our seeing each other and understanding our lives and learning to heal. So,
is there anybody besides you talking about that? Is there a forum for that someplace or anything?
Well, John Wood Jr. on YouTube has this organization, Better Angels. I think he's trying. Chloe Valdery, she's on Twitter too. I think there are other people trying. Glenn Lowry and John McWhorter, I really appreciate their conversations on this, and they're, I respect both of them. They come from the right and the left. That's why they're a good pair in some ways. But on one hand, you don't want to diminish the obvious history, the obvious horrible history of the United States on these terms. On the other hand, let's not do things that perpetuate it. And let's be able to talk about things that maybe aren't politically correct. And for me, I know that not saying all the rote things is going to cost me something. And I lament that cost, but I can't with integrity buy into that project. So then it's like, maybe I should just keep my mouth shut and go away. But another part of me says, no, I should speak my piece. So I'm just terribly conflicted by this.
I think speaking, as long as you're speaking honestly, this is my view for myself going forward, is that I'm not going to back off. Everybody says, oh, it's not worth this, it's not worth that. I says, I'm not trying to get something out of this. You know what I mean? These are things I'm discovering, and I want to just make them available. Just walk away if you don't like it. That's another hard part, right? People want to put you down for no matter what you're doing. I'm doing something. What are you doing? Well, what you're doing is wrong.
Yeah.
Like
you're walking away. You're not engaging. You're
That's what I heard.
So what is it?
I have another musician friend who says, you make it impossible to have a conversation with you. I'm like, really? I said, nobody that I have conversations with thinks that. Maybe it's that you're coming into it wrong. You're coming with your shield up, expecting me to lie down. So did you see the bishop talk about the Trump church Bible thing?
No.
Oh, that's what I saw. That's the only news I saw yesterday. And again, I'm so trained by Adams to see this stuff instantly. Yeah. The first sentence out of her mouth, I'm like, she's mind reading. She doesn't know that. Yeah. She's making it up. She's putting her opinion out there as a bishop, right? So it carries weight with certain people, I would think, and she's doing fake news.
Yeah.
I mean, why not have a conversation with the president and talk about it, or why not do something? Anything with a conversation, right? It's got to be better than all the stuff that doesn't have it, because nobody ever learns anything, and it's sad. I'm sad. I wish the world was looking better today.
Yeah, me too. Well, I've got another conversation right after you, but John, this has been a pleasure.
Thank you.
I don't know. Can I share this conversation? What do you think? You want to see it
Oh,
first, or?
oh, I'm all about it. Yeah, all my friends are waiting to see it.
This was a delight. It's you're a breath of fresh air, and I learned a ton for you. And I'm gonna steal a bunch of these lines that and notes that I took from you because I think they're terrific.
I appreciate it, Paul. Thanks a lot.
Take care, John. Bye bye.
Have a great day. Bye bye.